So, with anything in life, we compare it to its relativity. How big is something in comparison to something else? If I were to give you, say, this lens cap and ask you how big is this lens cap, you might say, okay, well, it's quite small. It's not as big as most objects, but you won't have a clear indication. But if I were to give you this eraser, you might say, okay, well, the lens cap is quite big in comparison to this eraser. Or if I were to give you this bottle, the lens cap becomes relatively small in comparison to this bottle. But, why am I saying this? How big are your problems? Now, you might ask yourself this question and you might not know, but your problems are only as big as what it is up against. And your problems, my friend, are up against the God who is capable of moving the mountains. Your problems are so minute in compared to God. We have bought into this idea that our problems are bigger than God, our problems are bigger than ourselves, and that is so far from the truth. It's very funny because in life, as soon as we get uncomfortable with something or something happens to us and we say, I don't like what's happening to me, we give into the enemy's ways. And that is how addiction begins. Addiction can be traced back to something we can't live with. We say, I don't like what's happening to me. I'm going to do what the enemy does just to get my peace back. And that is not a life worth living. One of my favorite verses in the Bible, Jeremiah 29 verse 11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future." And I think it's time that you start relying on this verse, because this is God's promise to you. He has promised to give you a hope and a future. And there are going to be storms in your life. Sometimes God will place these troubled times in your life so that you can seek God more than you can seek the relief of getting through these times. And, God did not say that there weren't going to be any storms in your road, in your way. Storms are going to come. God did promise you that you can find peace in the middle of these storms if you seek Him more. So, my friend, I encourage you this week, when the devil is picking on your shoulder, I want you to tell him who he is up against. I want you to tell that problem he is up against a God who is 10 times bigger than your problems. Your problems are not as big as God. And I want to encourage you, stop making your problems as big as God, because it is not. I pray for you that you have a blessed week and that you'll keep on fighting.